We've all heard that old stereotype, right? The lazy Southern European, always taking a siesta. Well, today we're going to blow that myth right out of the water. We're diving deep into the real structural reasons behind Spain's youth crisis, a story about a system that's failing an entire generation.
Okay, so imagine this. You're 27 years old. You've got 2 master's degrees. You speak 3 languages. On paper, you are a productivity machine. But in reality, you're living with your parents and folding T-shirts at a Zara. And look, this isn't some made-up story. It's the daily reality for millions of young Spaniards, and it's the human face of a massive systemic problem.
So, how did things get so bad? Well, it all starts with the foundation of the problem, a labor market that is literally split in two. This isn't just an economic theory. In Spain, it's pretty much a caste system for jobs.
Yeah, economists call this a dual labor market. The easiest way to picture it is like a medieval fortress. Inside the walls, you have the insiders. They're safe, they're protected. And then outside, in the mud, you have the outsiders. That's the youth, totally exposed to everything. And their main goal in life? Just trying to find a way to get inside those walls.
And just look at how stark this division really is. Insiders, who are mostly older workers, they've got permanent contracts that are basically ironclad. Firing them costs a fortune. But the outsiders, the young people, they get shuffled between temporary contracts, sometimes lasting just a few weeks, with absolutely zero job security. They are, for all intents and purposes, disposable.
And here's the brutal consequence of that system. When an economic crisis hits, guess who gets the axe? It's not the expensive, protected insiders. Nope. Companies just let the temporary contracts for young people expire. It basically turns the entire youth population into the shock absorbers for the economy. And that is how you get a truly mind-boggling number like this after the 2008 crash.
But hold on. You might be thinking, didn't they try to fix this? And you're right. In 2021, Spain passed a big labor reform that was supposed to get rid of all this temporary work. And if you just look at the stats, things look better. But when you peek under the hood, it's a very different story.
So what the reform did was create a massive surge in these things called fijo discontinuo contracts. Now, on paper, you're permanent, which is great news for the unemployment statistics. The problem is you only work and you only get paid when the company actually needs you. So for a hotel worker, that might mean you have no income at all for months during the off-season. So yeah, the name on the contract changed, but the reality of not knowing where your next paycheck is coming from, for a lot of people, that didn't change one bit.
So you've got this fortress of a job market. But even for the lucky few who manage to find some kind of work, that's when they run into a whole new set of walls. Because, you see, it's not just about having a job. It's about whether that job can actually let you build a life. And that's where we find these 3 huge traps that work together to make real financial independence basically a fantasy. You've got an education system that creates skills the economy can't use, an economy built on tiny companies that can't pay well, and a housing market that is just completely spiraling out of control.
Let's start with the degree trap. Spain has this cultural obsession with university degrees, a phenomenon some people call titulitis, or degree-itis. The country produces tons of highly qualified graduates, but the economy just hasn't caught up. And the result? You can see it right here in the numbers. More than a third of Spanish graduates are stuck in jobs that don't need a degree at all. It's an enormous waste of talent.
One of those sources we looked at put it in a way that just perfectly captures the frustration. It's like you've got this incredible high-performance Ferrari engine, that's the educated youth, but it's stuck inside the body of a clunky old Fiat Panda. That's the job market. All that power, all that potential just goes to waste.
Next up is the size trap. Just look at this. The Spanish economy is absolutely dominated by what they call pymes. These are micro-enterprises with fewer than 10 employees. And these tiny businesses just don't have the money or the scale to invest in new technology, to innovate, or, crucially, to pay high wages. So it's not that the workers are unproductive, it's that the companies they work for are stuck in a low-productivity model.
And all of this, the bad contracts, the wasted degrees, the low wages, it all leads to the final trap, the rent trap. And this one number just says it all. The average age a young person in Spain leaves their parents' home is over 30. And let's be clear, this is not a cultural choice, this is forced. It's an extended adolescence you can't escape from because of a brutal housing market. I mean, just do the math. It's impossible. A typical entry-level salary in a city like Madrid might be, 1,300 euros a month after tax? Well, a simple one-bedroom apartment can easily cost 1,100 euros. What this really is a massive transfer of wealth. The tiny salaries of the young working poor are going straight into the bank accounts of older landlords who own all the property.
So this is way bigger than just a bunch of individual sob stories. This systemic failure is creating a ripple effect with absolutely devastating long-term consequences for the entire country. A crisis for young people is quickly turning into a national emergency. Think about it. If you're 32 years old, still living in your childhood bedroom and jumping between temporary contracts, are you thinking about starting a family? No way. You're thinking about how to survive till next month. And this economic instability has led directly to a demographic winter. Spain's birth rate is one of the lowest in the world, not even close to the level needed to keep the population stable. And what about the ones who can leave? Well, they're voting with their feet. It's estimated that 1.5 million young people have packed their bags and left Spain since the financial crisis. So Spain spends all this money to educate a doctor or an engineer, only to watch them move to Germany or the UK right after graduation. It's a catastrophic brain drain.
And this all creates an absolute nightmare for the pension system. See, Spain has a pay-as-you-go system. The people working today pay for the pensions of the people who are retired today. That works great when you have a pyramid, lots of young workers at the bottom supporting a few retirees at the top. But now, it's an inverted mushroom. With fewer young people working and more people retiring, the ratio is getting dangerously close to 1-to-1. It is just mathematically impossible to sustain.
So when you put all the pieces together, the broken labor market, the traps that prevent independence, the demographic collapse, you start to see that what's happening in Spain isn't just some local issue. It's a flashing red warning light for the rest of us.
But this brings up a really important question. If things are truly this awful, if you can't afford rent, you can't plan a future, you have no stability, then why isn't the country on fire? Why aren't there massive riots on the streets like we've seen in other parts of Europe?
Well, it turns out there are a couple of powerful, almost invisible safety valves that keep things from exploding. First, the Spanish family is the real social safety net. Parents and grandparents provide housing, food, and money. And second, there's a huge shadow economy. We're talking maybe a quarter of the entire GDP that provides cash-in-hand income. Together, these two things create what you could call a zombie stability. The country looks like it's holding together, but the underlying disease is just getting worse.
And you can imagine this has a huge psychological impact. When the big goals in life, like buying a home or starting a family, are completely out of reach, you spend your money on what you can afford. A cheap flight for the weekend, the newest phone. From the outside, it might look like they're just living for the moment, but really, it's a form of hopelessness disguised as hedonism. It's a coping mechanism for a generation that feels like its future has been stolen.
So, when you strip away all the excuses and stereotypes, the real truth is this. Spain's youth crisis has nothing to do with being lazy. It's about a labor market designed to protect the old by sacrificing the young. It's about an economy that wastes the incredible talent it produces. It's about a housing market that's rigged against them. And it's a demographic time bomb that is ticking louder every single day.
And that leaves us with one last and frankly chilling question. As we see housing crises, precarious work, and growing divides between generations in our own countries, we have to ask ourselves, is Spain just a strange, isolated case, or is it the canary in the coal mine showing us a future that might be coming for all of us sooner than we think?